Hi there. Today I will switch to reading this book called Heidi. This is a bilingual book and I'll be reading the first chapter. Up the mountain to Uncle. From the old and pleasantly situated village of Mayenfed, a footpath winds through green and shady meadows to the foot of the mountains, which on this side look down from their stern and lofty heights upon the valley below. The land grows gradually wider as the path ascends, and the climber has not gone far before he begins to inhale the fragrance of the short grass and sturdy mountain plants, for the way is steep and leads directly up to the summits above. On a clear sunny morning in June, two figures might be seen climbing the narrow mountain path. One, a tall, strong-looking girl; the other, a child whom she was leading by the hand, and whose little cheeks were so aglow with heat that the crimson color could be seen even through the dark sunburnt skin. And this was hardly to be wondered at, for in spite of the hot June sun the child was clothed as if to keep off the bitterest frost. She did not look more than 5 years old, if as much, but what her natural figure was like, it would have been hard to say, for she had apparently two, if not three dresses, one above the other, and over these a thick red woolen shawl wound round about her. With its small feet shod in thick nailed mountain shoes, it slowly and laboriously plodded its way up in the heat. The two must have left the valley a good hour's walk behind them when they came to the hamlet known as Dorfley, which is situated halfway up the mountain. Here the wayfarers met with greetings from all sides, some calling to them from windows, some from open doors, others from outside. She did not, however, pause in her walk to respond to her friends' welcoming cries and questions, but passed on without stopping for a moment until she reached the last of the scattered houses of the hamlet. Here a voice called to her from the door. Wait a moment, Deet. If you are going up higher, I will come with you. The girl thus addressed stood still, and the child immediately let go her hand and seated herself on the ground. Are you tired, Heidi? Asked her companion. No, I'm not, answered the child. We shall soon get to the top now. You must walk bravely on a little longer and take good long steps, and in another hour we shall be there, said Deet in an encouraging voice. They were now joined by a stout, good-natured looking woman, who walked on ahead with her old acquaintance, the two breaking forth at once into lively conversation about everybody and everything in Dorfley and its surroundings, while the child wandered behind them. And where are you off to with the child? Asked the one who had just joined the party. I suppose it is the child your sister left. Yes, answered Deet. I am taking her up to Uncle, where she must stay. The child stay up there with Uncle. You must be out of your senses, Deet. How can you think of such a thing? The old man, however, will soon send you and your proposal packing off home again. He cannot very well do that, seeing that he is her grandfather. He must do something for him. I've had the charge of the child till now, and I can tell you, Barble, I am not going to give up the chance which has just fallen to me of getting a good place for her sake. It is for the grandfather now to do his duty by her. That would be all very well if he were like other people. Aggravated stout Barble warmly. But you know what he is, and what he can do with a child, especially with one so young. The child cannot possibly live with him. But where are you thinking of going yourself? To Frankfurt, where an extra good place awaits me, answered Deet. The people I'm going to were down at the bath last summer, and it was part of my duty to attend upon their rooms. They would have liked then to take me away with them, but I could not leave. Now they are there again, and I have repeated their offer, and I intend to go with them. I am glad I am not a child, exclaimed Barble, with a gesture of horrified pity. Not a creature knows anything about the old man up there. He will have nothing to do with anybody, and never sets his foot inside a church from one year's end to another. When he does come down once in a while, everybody clears out the way of him, and his big stick. The mere sight of him, with his bushy gray eyebrows and his immense beard, is alarming enough. He looks like any old heathen or Indian, and few would care to meet him alone. Well, and what of that? Said Deed in a defiant voice. He is the grandfather all the same, and must look after the child. He is not likely to do her any harm, and if he does, he will be answerable for it, not I. I should very much like to know, continued Warble, in an inquiring tone of voice, what the old man has on his conscience that he looks as he does, and lives up there on the mountain like a hermit, hardly ever allowing himself to be seen. All kinds of things are said about him. You, Deed, however, must certainly have learned a good deal concerning him from your sister. Am I not right? You are right, I did, but I'm not going to repeat what I heard. If it should come to his ears, I should get into trouble about it. Now Barble had for long past been most anxious to ascertain particulars about Uncle, as she could not understand why he seemed to feel such hatred towards her. His fellow creatures insisted on living all alone, or why people spoke about him half in whispers, as if afraid to say anything about him, and yet unwilling to take his part. Moreover, Barble was in ignorance as to why all the people in Dorfley called him Uncle. Barble had only lived in Dorfley since her marriage, which had taken place not long before. Previous to that, her home had long been below in Partigu, so that she was not well acquainted with all the events that had ever taken place. And with all the people who had ever lived in Dorfley and its neighborhood, Deet, on the contrary, had been born in Dorfley, and had lived there with her mother until the death of the latter the year before, and had then gone over to the Bath at Regat's and taken service in the large hotel there as chambermaid. On the morning of this day she had come all the way from Raithgate with a child, a friend having given them a lift in a hay cart as far as the Maidenfield. Barble was therefore determined not to lose this good opportunity of satisfying her curiosity. Very well, then, I will tell you. But just wait a moment, said Deet in a warning voice, and she looked back to make sure that the child was not near enough to hear all she was going to relate. But the child was nowhere to be seen, and must have turned aside from the following her companions some time before, while these were too eagerly occupied with their conversation to notice it. Deed stood still and looked around her in all directions. The footpath wound a little here and there, but could nevertheless be seen along its whole length nearly the Dorfy. No one, however, was visible upon it at this moment. I see where she is, exclaimed Barble. Look from there, and she pointed to a spot far away from the footpath. She is climbing up the slope yonder with the goat herd. I wonder why he is so late today, bringing them up. It happens well, however, for us, for he can now see after the child, and you can the better tell me your tale. Oh, as to the looking after, the boy need not put himself out about that. She is not by any means stupid for her 5 years, and I knows how to use her eyes. She notices all that is going on, as I've often had occasion to remark, and this will stand her in good stead some day. For the old man has nothing beyond his 2 goats in his hut. Did he ever have more? Asked Barrel. He, I should think so indeed, replied Deed with animation. He was owner once of one of the largest farms in Dorset. He was the elder of 2 brothers. The younger was a quiet, orderly man, but nothing would please the other way but to play the grand gentleman and go driving about the country and mixing with bad company strangers that nobody knew. He drank and gambled away the whole of his property, and when this became known to his mother and father, they died, one shortly after the other of sorrow. The younger brother, who was also reduced to beggary, went off in his anger. No one knew whether while uncle himself had nothing now left to him but his bad name also disappeared. For some time, his whereabouts were unknown. Then someone found out that he had gone to Naples as a soldier. After that, nothing more was heard of him for 12 or 15 years. At the end of that time, he reappeared in Dormseg, bringing with him a young child, whom he tried to replace with some of his king's people. Every door, however, was shut in his face, for no one wished to have any more to do with him. Embittered by this treatment, he vowed never to set foot in Dormseg again, and then he came to Dorfleet, where he continued to live with his little boy. Then he apprenticed his son Tobias to a carpenter. He was a steady lad and kindly received by everyone in Dorfleet. The old man was, however, still looked upon with suspicion, and it was even rumored that he had been forced to make his escape from Naples, or it might have gone badly with him, for that he had killed a man not in fair fight, understand, but in some brawl. We, however, did not refuse to acknowledge our relationship with him. My great grandmother on my mother's side having been a sister to his grandmother, so we called him uncle. And since he went to live on the mountainside, he has gone everywhere with the name of Uncle. And what happened to Tobias? Asked Barbel. He was listening with deep interest. Tobias was taught with his trade in mills, and when he had served his apprenticeship, he came back to Dorfleet and married my sister Adeline. But their happiness did not last long. Her husband met with his death only 2 years after their marriage, a beam falling upon him as he was working and killing him on the spot. Adelaide was so overcome with horror and grief that she fell into a fever from which she never recovered. 2 months after Tobias had been carried to the grave, his wife followed him. Their sad fate was the talk of everybody far and near, and both in private and public, the general opinion was expressed that it was a punishment which Uncle had deserved for the godless life he had led. But the old man grew only more wrathful and obdurate, and I would not speak to a soul. And everyone did their best to keep out of his way. All at once we heard that he had gone to live up the Alm and did not intend ever to come down again. And since then he has led his solitary life on the mountainside, at enmity with God and man. Mother and I took Adelaide, little one, then only a year old, into our care when mother died last year, and I went down to the Bay to earn some money. I paid old Ursel, who lives in the village just above, to keep and look after the child. And so I leave the day after tomorrow, and I can assure you it is an excellent place for me. Are you are and you're going to give the child over to the old man up there? It surprises me beyond words that you can think of doing such a thing, Deed, said Barble in a voice full of reproach. What do you mean? Retorted Deed. I have done my duty by the child, and what would you have me do with it now? I cannot certainly take a child of 5 years old with me to Frankfurt. But where are you going to yourself, Barble? We are now halfway up the Alm. We have just reached the place I wanted, answered Barble. I had something to say to the goatherd's wife, who does some spinning for me in the winter. So goodbye, Deet, and good luck to you. Deet shook hands with her friend and remained standing while Barble went towards a small dark brown hut. It was situated halfway up the Alm, reckoning from Dorfley, and it was provided with some shelter, for it was so broken down and dilapidated that even then it must have been very unsafe as a habitation. For when the stormy south wind came sweeping over the mountain, had the goatherd dwelling been standing above on the exposed mountainside, it could not it could not have escaped being blown straight down into the valley without a moment's warning. Here lived Peter, the 11-year-old boy who every morning went down to Dorfley to fetch his goats and drive them up onto the mountain, where they were free to browse till evening on the delicious mountain plants. Then Peter, with his light-footed animals, would go running and leaping down the mountain again till he reached Dorfley, and there he would give a shrill whistle through his fingers, whereupon all the owners of the goats would come out to fetch home the animals that belonged to them. It was generally the small boys and girls who ran in answer to Peter's whistle, for they were none of them afraid of the gentle goats, and this was the only hour of the day through all the summer months that Peter had any opportunity of seeing his young friends, since the rest of his time was spent alone with the goats. And that's the end.